Do you know how to cut and maintain your self-healing cutting mat? Today on Cool Tools, I want to feature the SewTites magnetic cutting system because they're having a special sale till the 30th of August. If you purchase a SewTites magnetic cutting system, they're giving away for free their sew and store easel, so you can store all of your SewTites and keep them handy dandy so you don't lose them. And I will tell you, since I've gotten my sew and store, I have not lost a single SewTite because I put them right there. The other thing I use it for, which I think is kind of fun, is I have a few hand needles up here that are always on the ready because I can see them and they're right there. So it has prevented me from needing to run around to find a hand needle too, which is super fun. That sale is going on until the 30th of August. I'm putting my affiliate link in the description below because you get 15% off your purchase. Now, if you're not interested in the magnetic cutting system, you can buy anything they carry for $350 and you'll still get the sew and store. So maybe you want to stock up on SewTites. The SewTite magnets are amazing and there are so many uses for them. I'm going to put links in the description below to all the tutorials I've done featuring how I use SewTites. So now I want to get to the cutting mat itself. A self-healing cutting mat has a surface that's made up of teeny tiny little particles of plastic. Usually it's PVC, but the cool thing is the self-healing properties happen because as you cut with your rotary cutting blade, those little particles don't get cut, they separate and they let the blade roll across the surface, and then as it moves on to the next thing, that little cut seals back up. That's how a self-healing mat works. And now I want to give you some strategies and some tips to keep it in its best condition so it lasts a long, long time. So the first tip is you want to cut with a sharp blade. Why do you want to do that? You want to do that because a sharp blade is going to make the least invasive cut to your self-healing mat. If you're working with a dull blade, you'll actually be pressing down harder and it's actually going to mar the surface considerably more than a sharp blade. So you want to keep a sharp blade on your rotary cutter. And this blade was put on here on May 27th. And the reason why I know that is because I did a Cool Tool sharing the Headley Japanese hard steel replacement blades, which are really priced to save you a ton of money. So I'm putting a link to these in the description below as well. But I've been using the same blade for almost 3 months to the day, and it's still pretty sharp. So I'm going to show you how to change your rotary cutting blade now, because I think 3 months is a good run for a blade, even though I probably could use it a little bit more. I know when you go to buy rotary cutting blades, especially if you buy the branded ones, they tend to be very expensive, so the inclination is to keep them on as long as possible. But really, it's almost like a sewing needle. You want to replace them as soon as you notice that they're getting dull, so you don't damage your more expensive equipment like your self-healing cutting mat. So the way I take my blade off is I line my pieces up. So I'm going to take the nut off and put it down. The little, bent little ring there. Then I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to take the plastic screw off that holds the whole thing together. And then I'm going to take my used blade off. This gives me the opportunity to come in and clean all the pieces of my rotary cutter because lint and other things will get trapped in there. So I'm going to go ahead and clean that. Then I'm going to get myself a new blade. And you want to be super careful here because they're oiled, so they might be stuck together. So I just try to, pick one up off the edge and maybe slide it, or if they're all on the post in the container, take them out and then just slip one off gently. And then I'm just going to put the rest back. And again, you want to be really careful not to cut yourself when you're getting a blade out. So I know it seems counterintuitive to take them out, but you know, they're not going to cut you if you're just touching them like this, but you just want to make sure you don't press down hard. Like if you're having trouble separating them, use a cloth or something to separate them. So I'm going to shut that so all the oil stays in my container there. And then I'm going to pick up my blade and I'm going to seat it where it goes. I'm going to put my screw back on, then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to put the little ring on and the nut. Okay, and then when I screw the nut back on, I'm going to screw it down so it's snug. Like not with all my muscle, but just making sure it's pretty firm. You want a stable blade when you're working with the self-healing mat. When I'm working with my non-self-healing mat, I loosen my blade a little bit for that mat. But when you're working with a self-healing mat, you want it to be firmly on. Then I'm going to take my used blade, and that is going to go in my old blade case. I put an O here, and I'm just going to stick that in here. And you can see my, the last blade I used was silver. It's an Oflo blade. So now I'm going to put my first Japanese hard metal Healy Tools replacement blade in there. And then when this fills up, I will recycle it at the town transfer station with the sharps. So that's how I deal with my old blades. And I've got my new blade on here now. And if I see any extra oil, I'll just give it a little rub with my cloth. And then I'm just going to test it out and see. So you can see it rolls really nice. It's ready to go. And now I can start cutting. Sharp blade number 1, and that was a quick tutorial on how to change your rotary cutting blade. The next thing is I want to show you how to cut. The best way to cut when you're working on a self-healing mat. I'm going to use the SewTites magnetic ruler here. The So Magnetic mat comes with 10 of these booster magnets. Okay, and most of them are here on my Sew and Store easel. But these booster magnets can be used to boost the magnetic power of the magnets that are already embedded into the ruler. So it comes with this very nice ruler, and if you need to be really stable, and this is super important for people who have arthritic hands or pain in their hands and they need help gripping things, having a magnetic ruler on a magnetic mat really helps keep things stable, and then you're not worried about it slipping. But when you cut, you want to cut so that the blade is perpendicular or at a 90-degree angle to the mat. So notice as I'm cutting, I'm butting my blade up against the raised surface of the side of the ruler, and I'm cutting. And when you do that, that's the least invasive way to run the blade over the surface of this self-healing mat. So let me show you again. I'm going to just cut again so you can see how straight I am and how you really can't see the cut mark that's there. It really didn't even make a mark. If you hold your rotary cutter at an angle to the ruler, it's going to gouge the surface of your mat. So if I hold the blade like this, and you can see I'm at a little bit of an angle, and I go to cut, you know, sometimes people think they have to jam that edge of the rotary blade against the ruler like this at an angle. What happens is, I don't know if you can see it, but I can see a very subtle cut right here where I did that, because it's actually shaving some of those particles off the surface of your mat. So take your time and make sure you're at a 90-degree angle when you cut. So that's the best way to cut on a self-healing mat. Another thing I might recommend is if you do a lot of the same kind of project, don't always cut on the same line. So for example, if you are cutting 10-inch squares or 10-inch pieces, use the 15-inch line sometimes, or use the, you know what I mean, use different lines on the board, because if you routinely cut on the same line, eventually that line is going to get traumatized. So you can see the SewTites Sew Magnetic mat has inches, half inches, and eighth inches that are very easy to see. So if you're using the lines on the mat and then the ruler to, you know, determine where you're going to cut, just pick different locations. Don't always cut on the same line. And if you've ever been at a fabric store that uses a rotary cutter and a mat to cut your fabric, you'll see at that yard mark or the yard and a half mark where it's just very beat up, because, you know, cutting in the same spot all the time will shorten the life of your mat. So if you're working on something and you don't need to be on a line, so you can turn it on an angle and cut, right? So you can cut in all the different directions. That will help extend the life of your cutting mat. So now what happens when you notice it's getting a little rough? You know, as the mat heals itself, lint can get caught in those little cuts, and it could make the surface feel a little, I don't know, like it's got a texture to it. So the first thing I want to do is tell you how to prevent that from happening to begin with. Is I would use some sort of either a soft cloth, or I like to use these Power Wipes by Mr. Clean, because it's got a little bit of an abrasive gripping power to it, but it's not going to rub off the lines on the board. I'm just going to use my spray bottle, and I'm just going to spray a little bit of water on my board, just a little bit. And then I'm just going to gently clean the surface of my board. Now, doing this will clean things like pencil marks, anything that easily wipes away. You'll be cleaning that, but you'll also be picking up the lint that's on the surface of your board. So when your board self-heals, there'll be nothing in there to get trapped. So to prevent all of that lint from getting trapped in the cuts, just wipe it down every time you use it. And this is a good opportunity to show you the SewTites magnetic mat comes double-sided with two colors. So you have a light side and a dark side, but that's a really good way to prevent lint from getting embedded as it self-heals. Let's say you haven't been keeping up with the maintenance of your mat. Another thing you can do is soak it in a tub of warm water, not hot water, warm water, you know, maybe 10-15 minutes. That's going to soften the surface, and then you could use a soft cloth or brush, or you can use one of these Power Wipes to wipe away lint and things that released because the water softened everything up and it allowed some of the lint to escape. So then you can wipe it down, dry it, and then it'll be so much nicer. You'll be shocked how much smoother the surface feels after you allow it to dry and finish self-healing. I would do that maybe, you know, every couple of months. Just give your mat a little bath in a warm water, and that's like a deep clean for your cutting mat. And honestly, you know, this isn't a huge mat. It's a 20 by 24 inch mat. I'm a garment sewer, but I find plenty of ways to use it. I use it to control the grain line on slippery fabrics. I use it to do a lot of my pattern work, because having those, you know, having the magnets and being able to just nail things down without scotch taping everything together is super helpful. But having it be this smaller size also means it's portable, and you can give it a bath in the tub without killing yourself in terms of, you know, fitting it in there. All right, so again, just to recap here, if you've been thinking about getting a SewTites magnetic cutting system, now's a good time, because you get the Sew in Store for free, and all of these tips that I'm sharing here today are going to be helpful to you whether you have the SewTites magnetic cutting system or another brand of self-healing mat. So I hope this little tutorial helps you wherever you are in your rotary cutting mat journey. And I just want to thank everybody for, joining me today. And I just want to give a shout out to the gals at SewTites. I have never worked with a small business that is made up of such wonderful people. So if you like to support small businesses run by amazing women, then SewTites is your company. So those are my tips for maintaining your self-healing cutting mat, for cutting on a self-healing cutting mat. If you have any questions or comments about that, please post those below and I will help you. And then again, if you are, in the market for the SewTites magnetic cutting system, check the links in the description below for that, plus links to other SewTites tutorials where I show how to use all of the SewTite magnets. There are so many ways to use them. I am in love with these products. So thank you guys for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day.